All right. Well, welcome to the Breast Podcast Ever. We're so excited today to have Miss Wendy Bunnell from Killer Boobies on here. And Wendy has a very, very interesting story that I think is really going to touch on a lot of concerns that some of our patients have had. And I think she's a great example of sort of paying it forward. So, with that small introduction, Wendy, great to have you on the Breast Podcast Ever. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
You bet. First of all, I love it. I love that we both have these catchy names for our podcasts and for our audiences. So we share that definitely in common. And, I'm just a regular girl. I just barely turned 50 last year.
I would have said 30, Wendy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you got some brownie points for that. Good job. Yeah, no, I just turned 50, mother of 6 beautiful children, grandmother to 11. I live in Utah. We have big families, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we do. And,
Yeah.
we're keeping that.
Are you allowed to say where in Utah?
I'm in southern Utah, down by Zion National Park. So, a lot of people think, oh, ski, Utah, mountain, snow. No, we're desert, red rock. It's 75 degrees outside. Sorry, folks that have snow right now, but we are enjoying beautiful weather. And unfortunately, so many people are recognizing this area as just like this little hidden gem, and our little communities exploding population-wise right now. With a lot of individuals that are coming here, but just a great life, great, beautiful. I have a business in real estate, and just that regular person out there that experienced something that really changed and shaped my life, and as a result, I feel impressed to, like you said, pay it forward, allow someone else the opportunity to discover and put the pieces together faster than perhaps I did, or my colleague and partner in crime, Leslie Smoot, who can't be here today. But that's really why we started Killer Boobies, was to help that one woman who's crying herself to sleep, not knowing why her body is falling apart and her life ultimately is falling apart, and for her to understand what the root cause is of maybe perhaps some of her symptoms. And I like to say the start of their healing, because you and I both know that getting the breast implants is the first step, right? Then there's other things and layers, and the onion has to be peeled so that that underlying health can finally be attained. And I have to say, after a year and a half, 18 months past explant surgery, I can say with 100% certainty that I have reclaimed my health. And that is the greatest gift I've ever been. I feel like I have had a second chance in life. And therefore, I want to give that gift to someone else that's struggling out there. And
There's
that's what
so
we do.
many things that have just run through my mind based on what you've said so far. And so, first I want to start, before I even get into like any of my questions, I've got so many right now. Tell us a little bit about what you were experiencing, how long you had the implants, what was sort of the final push to say there's something not right here.
Okay. So I had my breast implants. I got them in 2012. No, 2013. And no, 2012. I apologize. Skip that. 2012. And I had them in for 7 years. Now, I have to say that the first 5 years, there were some things looking back on it that I was experiencing that I just kind of chalked up to stress, or to, getting older, or whatever, the things that just are naturally going to happen as you get older and you age. And however, in 2018, my health took an absolute turn. I had never really had severe health issues in my entire life. And here I was, for every single day, every single month, I'm experiencing something new. I'm getting worse and worse. And I am going to every single doctor possible. I mean, I had a team of doctors. I'm one of those women out there that is very type A, And it's like, okay, we got some issues here. Let's bring in the army of people. We'll figure this out. We're going to get through. We're going to make it, I don't choose to live a life where I'm sick the rest of my life. That's
Can you
not
give
the
us
choice.
a sense the types of issues you were experiencing?
For sure. So the first one that started was tinnitus, like just absolute ringing in my ears. And I'm going to tell you right now that that's one of the last things. I'm still dealing with that. So I'm not going to say I've reclaimed my health, but there's some tweaks, right? There's some things that I'm still working on. The second thing that I experienced was incredible anxiety to the point where I was having panic attacks all the time. And so those were the first couple of things. But let me tell you, as things progressed, I'm going to go from head to toe in like 30 seconds so you can kind of get a picture of what this was. Had severe brain fog, had vertigo. I really shouldn't have been driving because there were many times where I really I was so dizzy I would have to pull over to the side of the road.
Can I ask you a question? Because this term brain fog gets used a lot, and I think everybody has an intuitive sense of what that means. But what did that mean for you?
I could only describe it as feeling like I had marshmallows in my head. I mean, really holding a thought and keeping a thought, being able to communicate. And my business, I'm also a speaker and various things I do some things out on the side where I do personal development, a little bit of coaching, but primarily real estate. My business requires that I speak and I can communicate. Well, when you can't grasp the file, right, of that word, and I'm not just saying, oh, sometimes we forget a word here or there. I'm talking, I couldn't communicate in sentences sometimes. It was all mumbled and jumbled, and I wasn't making any sense, and I couldn't hold a thought. It was scary, quite honestly. I thought, oh my gosh, am I having dementia already? I'm only, 48 years old at that point. So that to me is what I experienced with brain fog. Other people will describe it a little bit differently, but that's the common thing that I hear from people. It's just, I can't think clearly. I can't communicate clearly. Like I can't hold a thought, and that type of thing. So memory, all of that was impacted. Then the next thing is I can't say I was officially diagnosed, but they suspected I had Hashimoto's. So that, and then absolute chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. I had this in the middle of my back, right behind my breast implants. It would be this incredible pain that would kind of start and radiate and go up my shoulders, up towards my head. And it was debilitating. I could barely walk when that started to happen, and would go in 3-day increments. And so they said it was fibromyalgia because I feel like that's a catch-all when they don't know what's happening, right?
Now I'm curious, in your journey having the implants removed, do you have an understanding of why you had some of those chronic pains? Because it's something that I take a lot of time to explain to patients, but I want to get a sense from your perspective. What caused that pain?
So in my opinion, what caused that pain is I believe that there are a lot of chemicals in those breast implants. I also have all of these huge like moles in all around where my breast implants are. They're still there. And in my opinion, I'm not a good detoxer. I have MTHFR, didn't know that before. I'm slow to detoxifying. And during those years, I had some incredible stress too.
What is MTHFR for people who may not know?
I actually don't know what it stands for, but it's a gene mutation, which means, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the doctor here. Sure. It just means that I don't methylate properly. I don't detoxify, I'm very slow at detoxifying toxins in my system. And I liken it to a barrel with, okay, so you've got all of these things. You can't avoid certain toxins in the air. You can't avoid certain stressors in this life, but you've got a barrel, right? And I think my barrel was getting full. And when
that's a nice analogy.
When I threw those breast implants in there, it just went whoop, all the way to the top. So it was just like a tipping point where, okay, So now I'm putting women's conferences on and I'm speaking in front of thousands of people, and the stress. I write a book. Boop, 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 boop. Now all of a sudden, it's overflowing, right? Like my body says, I can't handle all of what you're giving me, right? So I think in my personal experience, the reason why, I'm slow to detoxify, and on top of that, I had some incredible stressful things. I notice a lot with women that they go through breast implant illness, that there's a significant something that happens in their life, divorce, death, something that their children are going through some really difficult times. Maybe they've got a child that goes to prison or whatever. I believe that this is a holistic thing. We are holistic beings, and it's not just the physical manifestation of I've got these breast implants, they're throwing chemicals in. I think there's a lot to be said that those women that tend to have breast implant illness after them, because some of them don't, some don't. I have 2 sisters that have breast implants. So there were 3 of us that got breast implants. I'm the only one that got significantly sick, right? There's 2 others. Now I think they're starting to piece things together, and they might be getting, I don't know. We'll see. Who knows if they'll get theirs out one day. However, for me, I think it was just the boulder in the jar, in the barrel, right? So here I have fibromyalgia. I'm starting to get serious gut issues, like serious gut issues. I'm afraid to put something in my mouth because I don't know how my body's going to react. I got to the point where I ate lean proteins and veggies, not because I wanted to, but because the only thing my body would be okay with were those 2 things, right? I'm losing a tremendous amount of weight. I've got cystitis and chronic UTIs, like just my body. I really feel like a hypochondriac. I mean, every day I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's something else. Like, how can one person be this sick?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I felt really, really healthy not that long ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those were the symptoms that I was having, head to toe. I was just really, I was really a mess. It was incredibly difficult to really survive. And I remember one night vividly, I was out in the backyard because remember, I had severe anxiety. I couldn't sleep also, total insomnia, could not sleep at all. My brain was buzzing one night at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I felt like I needed to run, fight and flight, right? At its very finest, fight and flight. I'm in my, sympathetic nervous system, and I have to run. So I'm in my backyard because I didn't want to be running outside with the cops would be like, why are you running at 2 o'clock in the morning, ma'am? So I'm running in my backyard, and I remember laying on the ground and looking up in the sky and saying, I am living a nightmare I can't wake up from. And nobody knows what's happening to me. I've got every specialist out there, right? I've got a specialist. I've got my primary care physician. I've also working with a naturopath, working with a nutritionist, working with an acupuncturist, and energy work, even like everything. I'm pulling out all the stops. Nobody can figure it out. I'm getting worse and worse.
And I'm sure that anxiety builds on itself. And so 1, you're not feeling well, you're sick. 2, you don't know why you're sick, and no one can really tell you why you're sick. And that just feeds into the same feedback loop.
Right. So, I mean, people ask me all the time, how did you figure it out? And this, you know what? I have to go here because this is the only thing I can say. It was a God thing. I literally got on my knees with my husband one night because I knew, my intuition was saying, Wendy, if you don't figure this out, you're not going to make it. You're going down really fast, really hard. Your body's falling apart. I had my appendix taken out 2 months before. I felt like things were starting to just not work properly. And so I got on my knees and said, you know what, God, I feel if it's my time to die and go, just give me a few weeks, months to really be with my family. That's the most important thing for me. Allow me some more good memories, please. But if it's not my time, will you please help me understand what's going on? And I said these very words. I finally asked the right question, and I think is what happened, is I said, I believe something's inside of me that's making me sick. Maybe it's a brain tumor. Maybe it's cancer. I feel like there's something inside of me. And within 3 days, I had 4 people who I very highly respected. They never give me their opinions, who said, Wendy, have you considered it might be your breast implants? Because
Mm.
and after the fourth one, I looked up and said, you're trying to tell me something, aren't you? And from that point forward, of course, you give me the information and I'm going to be swift and bold about my taking action, right? And I all I did was research for that whole weekend, and it was so refreshing to go on a Facebook group and say, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Oh my goodness, all of these people are having the same experience. This isn't in my head. I'm not a hypochondriac, right? And I got all the information of how I was supposed to do it, where I was supposed to go, and I contacted the doctor that ended up doing my explant, who did it correctly, got the consultation, and had the surgery within 12 days of finding out.
Wow.
So, no, that just doesn't happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It just doesn't happen. So it was quite a journey, and it still has been quite a journey. I don't want to discount the fact that, okay, I got my breast implants out, whoop, I'm perfectly healthy. It's taken a lot of work on my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health. All of those things had to be addressed for me to be in this place of I feel like I am content with my life right now. It is exactly the way that I had always hoped it would be.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story, and I'm sorry you had to go through all of that to get to this point. But I think your ability to communicate it to other patients is really important. So thank you for that. Um,
Absolutely.
the things that kind of stuck out to me in listening to you um, is this story about breast implant illness is one that we heard in the past. We heard it in the 1990s. And I think a big difference between the 1990s and now, for good or for bad, is social media.
Yeah.
And I think this ability for patients to recognize that it's not only me, that I'm not only the only one that's impacted here, I think is hugely important. And it connects patients in a way that they can pool their experiences and get a better understanding of what's going on to them. Because to be honest, the medical community, I think it's generous to say that we have a poor understanding of breast implant illness.
Mhm.
And I think that as many changes in breast care, whether it's breast cancer with lumpectomies and breast conservation treatment, or now with the care of the breast implant illness patient, much of these innovations, changes in mindset have come from patients. And I think the medical community has then followed, not necessarily quickly, but has followed over time. So I think being an advocate for patients is really, really important here, not only for patients, but for the medical community to understand that these are a real set of issues.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first thought. But what I'm really interested in? It's something that I have not really had a chance to talk to a patient in detail about.
Mhm.
Is we talk about detox a lot, and we
Yeah.
talk about what that means. So I'd love to get a sense of what that post um, explant journey was like for you. I'd love to hear about your experiences uh, at the time of the explant and in recovering in
Mhm.
the surgical period, but I'm really interested in what happened, 6 weeks afterwards. Now you're healed, things are going fine from a surgical perspective, but what about you in terms
Yeah.
of your holistic self?
Sure. Well, I really truly believe too many women try to detox right off the bat. They get them out and they're like, we got to detox. And what I find is that their body hasn't healed enough to do the detoxing. Let the sutures, let this heal, let your body come back, rest enough, take care of yourself, do a little self-care. Us women aren't very good at that, right? Um, and then start to detoxify. This is in countless interviews I've had with women, is that we want to hurry. We like to be able to take a pill and make it go away. Well, guess what? In this particular case, patience is a virtue, and being able to be okay with our body, because healing comes in waves. At least in my experience, it did. Where I would feel really good and go, oh, I'm good, and then boom, I'm down again, right? And again, that's a common story I hear from a lot of women that experience this. But I think that I looked at it with this holistic view of, I am not just a physical being, right? I've got an emotional side, I have a mental side, I have a spiritual side. And if I address all of those things, I will get healthy. And I also need to be compassionate and patient with my body as it goes through this. Now, I'm not going to tell you I was. There were a lot of times where I would get like, are you kidding me? This again? You know what I mean? Um, Chronic fatigue was one of the things that I experienced for a really long time, really long time. That was really hard. And honestly, this is of note, maybe to your people out there, your women that are experiencing this out there. I found that methylated B, even though everybody says you should have it if you're MTHFR, was actually not something my body metabolized very well, and actually was causing me more fatigue. And so listen to your body, right? So the moment I took methylated B out of my supplement jar, I actually started to feel a little bit more energy. So listening to your body, not getting so freaked out. If you looked at my supplement closet right now, I look like I am a health food store. Like I have that many health supplements. And I think we chase that supplement that's going to make us feel better. And so listening to your body and saying, you know what, sometimes less is more. I got a lot out of fasting. Crazy as that sounds, I got in a tremendous amount of benefit from literally fasting, sometimes 2 and 3 days at a time. For me, 3 days was max. I just couldn't do more than 3 days.
So now, were you doing a water fast or a dry
Yeah,
fast? A
water
water
fast.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's an interesting point. So what kind of led you to incorporate fasting into your detoxification?
I had a chiropractor that said, Wendy, you're a doer and you keep trying to find the supplement that's going to help your body. He said, you know, your body still has to take care of that supplement. It has to process it. It takes energy to do that, right? It takes, he goes, what if you just gave your body a break and you trusted your body? What would that be like? And I said, you know, you're exactly right. Maybe I got a trust issue here. Maybe I need to trust my body a little bit more and let it heal on its own
Yeah,
without
I'm a
so many
big
things.
I'm a big advocate of fasting in the detox process. You know, I think there's a lot of
Oh, you're freezing up.
sorry about that. I'm a big advocate of
Okay, that's
fasting.
okay.
I'm a big advocate of fasting
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the detox process because I agree with what your chiropractor said. I think there's a lot of benefits to your gut health as well as allowing your body the ability to recover. So it's interesting you say that because I talk to that with my patients as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So fasting was great. The other thing that was really, I concentrated on my intestinal, my health, having healthy intestinal tract, right? And so glutamine was a huge part of that. Colostrum was a huge part of that. Also did a little bit of zeolite or some other, you know, you could use something else, a binder to help get some of those heavy metals out of my system. That helped me a lot with my brain fog, some of the things that were occurring, you know, neurologically.
Now, did you have heavy metal testing in your capsules?
Okay, so this is something that I actually want you to be talking on my podcast about. My doctor did not encourage me to get those tested. He didn't feel like that was really worth the expense. I don't know. I don't
Did
have
you
the
have any testing of your capsules at all?
no, no. So I think that's an important part. I would like to, you know, explore that because honestly, I think I would have had more knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? So if I had more information about exactly what was going on in my body, I think I would have been able to heal faster than what I did because I was just going off of listening to my body.
Hmm.
Which eventually worked, but it would have been a lot easier, I think, had I had that knowledge. So
Yeah,
no, I never had that.
we do test all our capsules for bacteria and fungus. We also test all capsules for ALCL lymphoma and, of course, breast cancer. Um, but the heavy metal testing is difficult. Now, I have had patients where we've tested their blood for heavy metal content pre and post explant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a dramatic change pre and post explant. Now, there's not, we haven't put this together in a large study as we have with our capsules and bacterial fungal contamination. We put that together into a study. But the heavy metal piece is an interesting piece because anecdotally, in the few patients that we've tested before and after, there's been a change.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we haven't tested their capsules because I think that's more difficult to do than it is to get a serum test.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic that you do that and encourage that. And at the point that I had my explant, I didn't have all of this knowledge that I do now. Had I listened to this podcast that you and I are doing right now, and listened to the fact that it's important for you to get those tested, I certainly would have chosen that. And in fact, I was to the point, he's like, do you want your capsules or do you want your breast implants? And I was like, what am I going to do with breast implants afterwards? No, so I have pictures and everything. I saw them right after the surgery, but I didn't really choose. I wish I would have kept them. So all of those things, later that probably wasn't the best decision, but it's all a part of learning and growing and understanding more than you did before.
So another question that I've never really asked anybody, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask you, and if it's uncomfortable, let me know.
Okay.
Um,
I'm pretty sure you can't make me uncomfortable, but we'll see.
so are you angry? Are you angry that you were, as a young woman, were told um, that these are devices that are safe, have been tested, don't carry any health risks, uh, even though if you do look through the um, paperwork that patients are always given at the time of augmentation, there are, some clear clear statements about potential risks. But I don't think that that's made a clear point in the informed consent process.
Mhm.
So, do you feel at any level that there was misinformation, that you weren't provided with as many details as you could have been? It's hard to go back in time. Obviously, we can't go
Yeah.
back in time. You make the best decision with the information you have at hand. But moving forward, as you are an educator, is this something that women should be more aware of?
You know, that is a fantastic question. And I am 100% okay with answering this question. And I'm going to give you two parts. There's anger. There is anger. The first anger is, when you first have something occur to you, your first inclination is to blame someone else, right? And unless you have a lot of practice of taking responsibility very quickly, right? So the first one is, why didn't someone tell me this, right? Or these companies are keeping it secret because they want to make money, and so as a result all these people are getting sick and they don't know about it. You're right, you do get a pamphlet. Now, how many people read that? How many people read the owner's manual to their car? You know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't do that. Had I known and had informed consent at that point in my life, at the age of 41, I probably still would have done it, just simply because I was like, oh, that's someone else. That's not me. I'm healthy, whatever, right? Um, so was I a little angry at first at the companies? Yes. Yes, I was. I was also angry when I got onto the group, the Facebook groups. I found personal friends of mine who knew about breast implant illness, who had gone through this journey and never shared it with a soul. That's one of the reasons why Killer Boobies was born, was because I said, wait a second, I will not let that woman out there that's crying herself to sleep not know this information. This is ridiculous. So here I am standing up on top of my soapbox, shouting to the world, hey, consider your breast implants if you have these mystery symptoms. But I also think there's a component of being angry at yourself. Angry at yourself that you weren't more informed, angry at yourself for needing the breast implants to feel better about yourself. needing why did I need those breast implants? Why did I do this to myself? And I can't go back and reverse this. And there's regret and shame. And I find that a lot of women who get breast implants at some time or not have been sexually mistreated. So did we ever deal with that stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, all of those things, there's a lot of emotional stuff, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's something we've got to process, right? We've got to process the anger. We got to process the anger against the companies, against the doctors. For heaven's sake, they didn't know either, right? Or if they did, they informed us, but we didn't hear it. So it is one of the components to healing, I believe, is being able to process all of that stuff. We got to look the monster in the eye and process the junk, and take out the garbage. Let's start fresh. So it is healing and detoxifying yourself physically, right? Eating healthy, right? I can't stress how important it is to be putting good, nutritious food in your body, moving your body. But I also believe it's also emotionally processing all of the stuff that led to this point too. That is part of the journey. And that's maybe one of the hardest parts of the journey.
Yeah, I think it's a very emotional journey for patients, because I think it's hard to it's hard to understand who or what is to blame. And there is not, I think it's hard to say there's one person to blame, because I think there's been a general misunderstanding of prosthetic devices, and an implant is a device. And I think we've for a long time assumed that silicone is an inert device. And I remember very, very distinctly, I trained in Houston, and the breast implant was discovered in Houston. And actually, some of my professors way back in training at the Baylor College of Medicine were the very first people that had ever used breast implants when they were first invented by doctors Cronin and Giroux. I remember one of them very clearly telling me that people can't react to the silicone in breast implants because we use silicone in all types of areas in medicine. We use silicone, for example, in patients with rheumatoid arthritis for the implants in their hands. And I think that made sense to me at the time. I think there are certain issues with breast implants that are different than some of the other places that we use silicone or any prosthetic device. A big one is that your implants are underneath, by and large, your muscles, and they sit right on your rib cage. And that's an area of a huge amount of motion. You can imagine how much you're doing with your muscles at the shoulder and the chest. You're also taking in deep breaths. And I think a lot of the underlying physiology related to breast implant illness has to do with the ability to take deep, relaxing breaths. I also think it has to do with sort of the chronic discomfort associated with large devices that are restricting your range of motion at your pec muscle, at your serratus muscles towards your back, as you were mentioning, into your platysma muscle, going up into your neck and face. I think those anatomic issues are very much involved with a lot of the pain that patients experience, in addition to the chemical issues, which I think introduce some of these other symptoms that are so variable among patients. So that's kind of my personal, understanding to date of what's causing breast implant illness. I think it's difficult because really to understand this, we need a large patient registry, and we have to really tease apart a lot of the variables. How old was the patient? How long have they had their implants? What type of implant did they have? Above or below the muscle, incision patterns, all those things have to be, sort of registered and then correlated with symptoms. And unfortunately, no practice, even a practice that, is busier like ours, has the patient number to be able to do that type of a registry. But I think that's where social media, again, is so powerful. because, you know, a lot of these websites have tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of patients. And it's really the only place where we can get that type of power of statistics together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, you know, where does the patient community go from here? I think we've developed an understanding of I'm not alone. There are patients out there experiencing what I'm experiencing. But what is the next step to develop a more complete protocol as to how we should understand this?
You know, first of all, I'm just in so awe of what you just said, because I believe you know, your facility there in Ohio, and you as a doctor and your other coworkers are really ahead of the game. You're willing to look, you're willing to think outside the box. So many of the doctors that I have communicated with feel like this is a social media disease, right? And yet you're applauding social media for helping women come together and figure these things out. And your research has led you to believe that this is a real thing, right? Like women are really experiencing this and then they're really healing. Many of them are healing, right? So,
Yeah, I think
uh,
it's really important to, you know, I think both Dr. Kochek and I, Dr. Kochek's not here, shout out to Dr. Kochek. Um, Both he and I come from a very kind of scientific academic background. We're both faculty members at Ohio State. And I think one thing that he and I share is we know there's a lot we don't know. We
mhm,
don't even know what we don't know.
mhm,
And so I think that, particularly for breast implant illness, it's been very interesting from an academic standpoint because I think that there's a huge area of research here that needs to be done to
mhm.
get a better understanding of who is susceptible. It's not everybody, we know that. Um, there's a variety of presentation, but there's certain things that are in common. We know that.
Mhm.
Um, there's a demographic and an age component that's in common. So there are common threads here.
Yeah.
And I think that those are the areas of research that we really need to hone in on. You know, I don't know what shape that will take. You know, my sense is that it may not come from the academic or medical community, which means it's got to come from the patient community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where that's filling in the need. The groups on social media, what they're doing is, and I think there's a few real, you know, change makers out there that are leading the pack in terms of helping people gather the information that is going to be helpful. You know, whether it's, can I get insurance to pay for this? You know, that's a conversation many people, how am I going to do this? I know that this is a problem. How am I going to pay for it? Right. To the question of, okay, now how do I approach, how do I do it right? How do I do it correctly? And then to how do I detoxify? Where do I go from here? Oh, and to addressing those women that are saying, I got them out and I don't feel any better. Like, why? You know, well, there's lots of reasons. So I think that it becomes this huge, huge beast of topics. And that's one of the reasons why we at Killer Boobies are trying to help with certain topics that are that are very important, whether it's coming from a medical doctor or a a therapist or mental health professional, or a nutritionist, someone who's can help the body detoxify properly. I just feel like the more information, the more women understand and are empowered to make the right decision for their bodies, both up front, right? And then also once, because we know, I just explained to you, I probably would have gotten them anyways, right? So I needed to learn through my own decisions, through my own journey, that this was something that my body didn't like. And I'm grateful for that. I don't regret anything anymore. And in fact, I'm so, so grateful for my journey of breast implant illness. I don't feel anger anymore. It was an experience that I had, and has shaped me to be a different person at 50 years old, and I like this person at 50 years old. And so I don't regret any of it. And it's brought me to a community of people who are supporting and cheering each other and advocating for each other. And really, it's refreshing to see that many people loving and supporting each other. So I don't know if I answered that question correctly, other than I do believe that people are getting better, at your level where you're, and some of the plastic surgeons that are still doing implants are starting to get onto this informed consent process. I think that's really important, because if I would have really had any idea that this really truly could, many women are getting sick. You might be one of them. Make sure that this is right for you. At least I would have had that. And then when I started to have the mystery symptoms, they wouldn't have been mystery to me. I would have said, oh, remember, I signed that paper and now I'm having all of these symptoms that are showing up. I know exactly what it is, right? Now I got to get them out. So I think that's important. I think that knowledge is power, and having public awareness that this is just something that may occur. And if it does, these are the things and the steps. And maybe as women are considering implants in the future, that they really assess why they want them. Why is it necessarily? Why does it make them feel beautiful? Why don't they feel beautiful without it? All of those questions. So I hope that was answering your question the way that you were hoping would be answered. So
Yeah, I know you very much did. And I think, I really want to applaud you, what you guys are doing at Killer Boobies, because it's an important message out there. There's so much information that I think it's hard for patients to even now sift through it all. So I think conversations like this are really important. Where can people find you? Where can they find Killer Boobies if they want more information?
we have a podcast on all the major platforms. So whether it's iTunes, Spotify, we do have a YouTube channel. It's interesting. Our YouTube isn't as popular as a podcast, but that's okay. And so if you want to see our faces, get on YouTube. You can check it out there. And then we've got Instagram, Facebook, and we also have a website, killerboobies.com. So with that being said, we'd love for individuals to reach out to us. I love to hear stories. I love to hear successes, or also concerns. We gauge our topics by what people ask us to bring to the table.
Wendy, this was fantastic. I learned a lot. Thank you for being so vulnerable, so honest with your answers. And on behalf of me, Dr. Kochak, keep listening, keep learning, and we'll see you at the next episode of the Breast Podcast Ever.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.